Welcome back to Female Founder World. It's Jasmine here. I am the host of the pod, and today I'm speaking with Amy Divaraniya. She's the founder of a company called Oova. I think I first came across them maybe when one of the investors posted about the company on Instagram, and I kind of clicked on the website and I was like, "Oh, is this just a really expensive ovulation tracker? Like, what is this?" And then kind of got a bit deeper on their website and learned about what they were creating, and it is awesome. The technology that she's built, and she's been working on this for years, literally years. She has a PhD, so she is legit on the science front. She knows what she's talking about. And basically what they do is they are an ovulation tracker that tracks two key hormones that are indicators that you will ovulate soon. And it'll also tell you whether or not you actually released an egg during that fertility window, which apparently doesn't happen every month. So I thought that was a really interesting innovation that Amy's worked on. She talks about how she's brought this all to life with literally a team of two, which I thought was insane. They have 7 now, but originally it was two people on the team. She also got really deep on the advisory board that she's built, and literally the exact agreement that you can go and access to create your own advisory board, which I thought was super, super helpful. So that's towards the end of the podcast. So make sure if you're a skipper, skip through, but don't miss that bit because I think you'll find it really helpful. All right, I'm going to kick off the pod now. A quick reminder, do not forget to leave us a 5-star review. If you're listening to this and you haven't, come on, guys. What are you waiting for? Hey, Amy, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. Absolutely. I want to just kick off right away. And generally, I give each guest an opportunity to kind of tell us about their company in their own words and just spend a minute or so introducing us to what you're building at Oova.
Sure. So Oova is a women's health company that has developed an at-home test to monitor multiple hormones through urine. We track that data over time, and the whole goal is to really understand every woman's unique fertility profile. What we've identified is that every tool that's really out there on the market today for women who are trying to understand their cycle, it's really hardwired for women who have that perfect 28 to 32-day cycle. And if you have irregular cycles or unbalanced hormones, there really isn't a tool available for you outside of going through invasive treatments. And to me, I feel like that's normal. Women aren't getting pregnant in their early 20s anymore. So we really wanted to build a solution that was addressing the irregular woman who I truly believe is the normal woman. And so we learned what every woman's unique fertility or hormone baseline levels are. And then we detect fluctuation in our hormones by comparing to that. You get your actual hormone levels in the privacy of your own home within seconds. You basically pee on an Oova test, scan it with your phone, and you get your results in our app. So it's very seamless. And the other key component I'll add in is that we've also realized how important it is for the clinician to be involved in the equation. So if you're working with an Oova provider, we actually automatically sync your data with their Oova HIPAA compliant dashboard. So you don't have to worry about what's important for your doctor to know. We let them know exactly what they need to know.
Incredible. What a clever and helpful product. I want to understand a little bit more about what those two hormones are that you're tracking and why they're important in a fertility journey.
Sure. So we're monitoring 2 hormones at the moment, luteinizing hormone and progesterone. So if you think about a woman's cycle, there's really several hormones that play a critical role. But with luteinizing hormone, this hormone really plays a massive role in identifying the critical days for you to conceive. So the hormone, if you think about it, is basically at its baseline throughout most of your cycle. And then when you're about to ovulate, the LH levels start to spike. And when it hits its absolute peak, that's when the ovary is signaled to release an egg and you ovulate. So if you're trying to conceive, you want to have intercourse basically every other day during that surge so that you can optimize your chances of the sperm and the egg meeting. Progesterone is really important because it's also basically at a baseline level throughout most of your cycle. But then once an egg is released, the egg starts to emit progesterone. And so that's confirmation to you that you actually ovulated that cycle. So what a lot of research has shown is that even if women have a period every month, they may not release an egg every cycle. So if you want to know if you didn't conceive a certain month, is it because I missed my window? Or is it because I didn't release an egg? And if you don't release eggs regularly, that can also be an indicator of another issue that you and your doctor can discuss to treat. So it's really about empowering you with data so you can understand your own fertility journey.
What background are you coming to this from? I feel like you have a very much a scientific background just from my own research. What were you doing before you started this company?
Yeah, so I have a pretty heavy science background. I have a bachelor's in biology, I have a master's in bioinformatics, and then I also have a PhD in biomedical sciences.
Just casually got a PhD.
Casually got a PhD um, as in biomedical sciences with a focus on genetics of all things. So it's totally not related to fertility, but I'm a data nerd. So I was a data scientist in industry for several years, and give me data and I'll find all the nuggets of gold in there. So working with the Oova data has been incredible.
And how did the idea for Oova come about?
It was really through a personal struggle that I've been through. I've had irregular cycles my whole life, and my husband and I agreed early on that we wanted to pursue parenthood naturally and not go down the invasive route. Um, to be fully honest, the reason was I had a really deep mistrust for the medical community when it came to my fertility. I was misdiagnosed with PCOS multiple times when I was younger and put on a lot of medications I didn't need to be on.
So you were told that you had it when you didn't?
Correct.
Oh,
It just really shines light into how obtuse women's health is. Like, we don't fit a mold. And when clinicians are trying to diagnose you, you're basically checking symptoms off of a list. But our health is much more than just a symptom tracker. There's a lot of layers to it. So when we were trying to conceive, I did want to pursue naturally, and we tried everything. I peed on everything I could get my hands on, took my temperature 4:30 a.m. every day. I used every fertility tracking app, and luckily, after 18 months, I did conceive my son. But those 18 months were the most devastating of my life, and I didn't learn anything about my cycle despite all this data I was collecting. And that's when I really realized how hardwired all these tools were for women who had that perfect 28-day cycle. And I was like, the piece of information really missing from my data set is understanding my hormones. So how do I take all this innovation and technology that's being applied to every space but women's health and bring it here and actually make a difference? So that's really what spawned the idea for Oova.
amazing. How do you take all of those pieces of technology and bring them together? What were those first steps that you took once you had the idea?
Yeah, so it's funny because I probably can dig it out, but I have a picture of the whiteboard that I filled up with, okay, these are the milestones we need to hit. And if we don't hit these, we're not moving forward with Uva. So it had to be done completely at home. I didn't want patients having to mail samples to a lab or going to a clinic. It had to be done very accurately and sensitively. So I wanted a quantitative number, not just a yes or no or in this range. I also wanted this to be clinically trusted. So if you go to a doctor, I wanted a woman to be able to share that report with her doctor, and they actually trusted the results rather than just be like, I'm going to do my own protocol. So those are pretty aggressive milestones to set, but we hit it. So we first started off by thinking, all right, maybe what we need is a way to accurately read the current ovulation sticks. Maybe the problem is that by eye, I can't detect what the differentiations in the lines are. Right? So we started creating some algorithms to like interpret those. But then what I realized is if I dipped two test strips in the same cup of urine, I was getting different results. So I was like, well, I'm starting with a faulty test. Like, this isn't something that's reliable to start with. So it doesn't matter if I can read this better. That's when I was like, all right, we need to figure out how to build the test strip from scratch. Right? And so that's where we hit the ground running. We figured out how to build a quantitative lateral flow assay. It took us a few years to get there, but we hit the sensitivity metrics that I set, and that's why we were able to move forward with it. It was also about developing an algorithm to be able to read those tests really accurately, because I didn't want a woman sitting there with a magnifying glass like I used to sit in my bathroom trying to interpret the lines. So we initially honestly had a device that you would insert these strips into. And very quickly, I was like, this thing is going to get disgusting because you're going to have all this urine pooling all over. I'm not going to want to touch this anymore. So we're like, how do we get rid of the device? And so then we moved everything to the phone. We realized how powerful our cameras are. And like you're holding a computer in your hand. It's a very powerful device that we're holding. So if we could do everything on the phone itself, that's a game changer. So we dropped the idea of a device very quickly and moved everything to the phone. And that's where we are today. So now you can basically scan your Oova test with your phone and you get your results in seconds.
Wow. That's incredible. As for someone who has a real love-hate relationship with this thing, I think that that's an amazing use of that technology. I'm really conscious of the fact that developing this kind of technology must be extremely expensive. And you said that it took years to get here. How are you funding this type of project or this type of venture?
Yes, it's expensive, but if you talk to any investor, they're like, how did you accomplish this in such a low budget?
Really? Okay.
And I think it's about being really smart about how you spend your time. And then it's also about bringing in the right people to support you. So I will be the first to tell you that I am not the expert in anything. What I like to do is surround myself with people who are much smarter and more experienced than me because they can guide me to success. I can't do it alone, and I'm well aware of that. So I've always kind of seeked out people that could advise me or guide me in the best direction. And then, yes, there's a lot of like diligence that you have to do too to really educate yourself on every field because like from a biology background, like I don't know how to do business, I don't know how to do marketing, and I don't know how to build a lateral flow assay. I know how to read the data, but I don't know how to do the actual chemistry. So really educating yourself on all of these different aspects so you can understand your business through and through. That's I think something that I really pride myself on because if you ask me any question about the business, I can answer it to like a level of nauseating detail. But in a way, it's a great thing because you can actually speak to and you can understand the flaws. You can actually fix the problems instead of just sugarcoating. So, I mean, you asked about how we funded it. Early on, we got friends and family money. It was one of the most humbling experiences of my life because, like, you're basically laying naked, putting everything out there in front of people that care about you the most. And it's like, well, can you support me in this? And so for me, that was terrifying. But the response I got was so humbling because everyone was just like, I don't care what the idea is. I'm going to invest in you. It'll be a success. So I'm like, okay, it gave me confidence that I can do this. And then we used all of that money just to prove out that we can actually build the technology. For me, the priority has always been that the product has to work. We didn't spend any money on marketing until this month.
Wow.
And we founded in 2017.
Wow. And when did the first product actually become available to purchase?
So it first became available in September 2020 through clinical channels. So you had to be working with the clinical provider, and then you could purchase Oova through them. We launched direct to consumer in July of this year.
Wow. How is that shift going for you?
Oh, it's been so interesting. I mean, it's kind of backwards for us because I've always run Oova thinking we're going to be a direct to consumer company. And for me, it was like a reach thinking that clinicians would actually use our tech to supplement their care. But then the pandemic hit and the whole world was kind of turned upside down. So one thing that I had done over the 3 years we were developing Oova was I spoke with as many clinicians that would give me the time of day. And I just wanted to know, like, if I created something like this, would you find it useful? How would you use it? How would you want to see the data? What information can I provide to you that would be valuable? And so I took all of that information and I just kept on like harnessing it into our platform. And so when the pandemic hit, fertility clinics are being forced to shut down because fertility treatment was viewed as an elective procedure. And all of a sudden, you have all these couples and families that are kind of left stranded and being told, I'm sorry, your treatment has been postponed indefinitely. And that's the worst piece of information you could give to a couple trying to conceive, right? So we had clinicians start reaching out to us to see if they could use our technology to do remote hormone monitoring so that they could at least monitor the patients before treatment reconvened. And so we quickly pivoted. We put together a HIPAA compliant dashboard. And now when a woman scans her test at home, she gets her results in the app. But at that very moment, her doctor gets her quantitative results in their dashboard. So we've figured out a way to actually enable remote hormone monitoring in real time. And that has never before been available. So that was a huge game changer for the fertility industry. And we're now in over 85 clinics across the country, growing daily. It's just taken off very nicely. So we actually launched B2B before B2C, and that's not what we had projected at all.
Kind of double clicking on that B2C piece, you said that you've really only started looking at or investing in marketing in the last kind of month or so. What does that look like for a healthcare product like this? Like, what are you doing? Paid ads? Do you host events? Are you using influencers? Like, how do you get the word out there about a product like this?
So far, it has all been organic, right? So all of our growth has been either through our clinical channels or women successfully conceiving and telling their friends about it, feeling empowered, telling their friends about it. So that's been what's been happening to date. Now, when it comes to marketing, and I mean, you can fault me in the fact that I don't have a marketing background at all, but I'm very adamant that we're not going to go crazy on social media. I feel like that space is very crowded with misinformation, and I don't want to compete with that to educate women on Oova. I feel like women are incredibly intelligent, and given the right pieces of information, they can make the right decision. So we're going about it from a very different strategy than what a lot of the competitors in the space are. We're doing a lot more wholesome approach where it's a lot more touch points. There are a lot more innovative ways for us to reach you outside of just bombarding you with Facebook and Instagram ads. Instead, what we're doing is really pushing up meaningful and useful content that I think is really important because women are like they're incredibly smart, but the problem is that women don't know enough about their bodies. We're just not taught that information. And I mean, I shared my background earlier. I'm pretty heavy in the science field, but I did not know the importance of ovulation, why LH mattered, why progesterone mattered, until I was trying to conceive and I had to educate myself on all of that. That's ridiculous.
Mm. Yeah, that is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if you didn't know that, how is anyone else supposed to?
Exactly. And I mean, I feel like I had some leverage because I spoke the language, so I could pick up on the vocabulary, the terms very quickly. But for a lay person, like that's a very overwhelming experience to go through. And so we're trying to alleviate that in a really organic way.
Incredible. I want to understand what your team looks like and what kind of team it takes to bring something like this to life and kind of what role you're playing within that now.
So pre-pandemic, we were a team of two.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So we are now a team of seven. It's predominantly engineers, and we just recently brought on a marketing hire who's kind of leading all of our efforts here. And we have an operations manager who handles all of our supply chain, but it's very heavy on the tech side because if the technology doesn't work, our product doesn't work. So we kind of put a lot of our emphasis there. My role is really overseeing all of the different areas. I'm very hands-on. I like to understand what the algorithms are. I'm the one that's doing all the data modeling. That's my Saturday morning project every week. Um, and I just think it's really important that even in the marketing messaging, while I let our team kind of lead that, I just want to make sure that it's very authentic and true. Because the big thing about our brand is that I've lived it and I built a product because I felt such a big pain point, and I want to make sure our users understand that we're there for them. We're willing to support you however we can.
Incredible. That is a very powerful way to start a community and to shape a brand. You mentioned before about how you're someone who comes from a biology background and you were really educating yourself on kind of like the business and the marketing side of things as you've gone through this. The last kind of question that I ask everyone who comes on the show, and that kind of ties back to that, is what resources have actually helped you? So if there's a book, a podcast, someone that you has mentored you, what's kind of helped you along the process of bringing Oova to life?
I mean, early on, it was very much Googling everything. Like that was like the number one thing I would do. But since then, I've kind of evolved. I'm very big on building strong networks. And like I said earlier, I like to surround myself with people who have been there, done that, can tell me like this will work, this won't work. And I'm not scared to ask for help. So I've leaned very heavily on advisors that we've brought on. Believe it or not, most of our advisors have actually reached out to me to come on board because they saw the potential and lived the problem themselves and really believed in our solution. And they've been invaluable to me. Um, I say advisors, I mean actual advisors that we've brought on, plus investors that we have on board as well. Um, like, for example, one of my advisors, he was actually my PhD advisor when I was doing my PhD. And I told him about the idea for Oova. He's like, this is something you need to push forward with, right? Like, this is something, Amy, you're, like, see it through. I was like, all right, now what? Right. And he's like, well, let's get a pitch deck together and then I'll put you in front of some investors. And I'm like, okay. I walked out of his office and I'm Googling, what is a pitch deck? Because I had no idea. I mean, I never saw myself in the startup world at all. And I swear, he put me in the room with one of the bigger named VCs within a week. That pitch deck that I printed out and gave to that guy had to have had about 57 slides in it. I had no idea what I was doing, but I quickly learned, right? So I think it's really important to be a sponge and really hear the advice and feedback that you're getting daily, especially early on. Don't take it to heart. Think of everything to be constructive and keep on growing because that's what got us to where we are today.
Brilliant advice. And I know I said that was my last question, but you've brought up advisors now, and that's something that I'm trying to learn more about. So do you have an advisory board, that I'm sure if you've got institutional investors, you have your kind of board, and then do you have a separate advisory board that have some equity in the company, or that how have you formalized or structured that kind of advisory group?
Yeah, so this is a great question because I think a lot of founders either don't tap into this and it could be an incredibly valuable resource. So, yes, you have your board for the company, but then you can have an advisory board, which are individuals that you give certain equity to. Some of them may invest, some of them may just give equity. Um, but the way that I do, the problem there is once somebody's granted equity, there's no leverage for them to continue working diligently with you, right? So what I've done is I've formalized it. There's an agreement that came out, I think, through Y Combinator called the FAST agreement. And what that does is it basically breaks out three different models. Depending on how much time you are willing to spend on my company in a month, this is how much equity I would give you based off of the stage of the company that I'm at, right? And it's a very objective way to measure performance. And I'm very transparent. Like, this is how we're defining the equity you're going to get. And we'll evaluate this every 3 months because I do a 1 year cliff for everyone. And we evaluate every 3 months. If they're not holding up their end of the bargain, we reduce it. If they're doing well over, I'm more than happy to increase it. So you kind of have that 1 year leeway to gauge how well that advisorship is going to go.
And how do you think about who you want to be advising the company? Are you looking at what your personal strengths and weaknesses are, or what it's easy or hard to hire for? How are you thinking about who should be in that role for Oova?
It's those two factors as well as where I see the company going in the next 6 to 12 months, right? So, for example, we were very heavy on building out our community and trying to um, figure out like how we're going to set this up. So I brought on a woman who is a therapist and specializes in infertility, and she has a huge community herself, and she's been helping me kind of think through. Okay, Amy, this is what you want to do internally to the community. This is what you want to do outside to grow the community. And it's just me not having to put my brain power into brainstorming versus executing. It's very different because now I'm letting someone think through the ideas who actually knows what they're talking about. And I just have to execute on it. And I can execute. I need the ideas to execute on. So that's one example, but like we're heading into a pretty heavy growth stage. So I'm really leaning on my business advisors right now to help me figure out like, okay, what are the projections we should stay true to? What are the models I need to think through for moving international? Like, who do I have to talk to? And they're just helping me make all the connections I need in the plan I need to do for each month.
Are you reaching out to them on a like a monthly basis over email? Are you scheduling calls and saying, hey, these are the top 3 things I need to support with right now? How do you kind of structure that communication?
Sure. So again, very transparent. So I do monthly check-ins with each of the advisors. I like to send them a quick agenda beforehand. Like, these are the topics I want to talk about. If there's anything else, feel free to add. Calls they range. They could be 20 minutes. They could be an hour and a half. I mean, it depends on what the topic is and where we are as a company. And oftentimes I will also be mindful that, like, okay, for the past like 3 months, I didn't really utilize you. So we're going to really package all that in the next 2 months. And everyone's very favorable to that. You have to also remember that you want to find advisors who not only believe in you, but also believe in your company's mission, because then they're not in it for the money. They're in it because they want to see you and the company succeed.
That's great advice. Amy, thank you so much for being so transparent and forthcoming with all of your learnings. I feel like, not every single person I speak with is so open and so helpful. So I really appreciate you getting into the tactical stuff there. I think that's what people really want to hear and what really helps founders when they're early on.
Awesome. Yeah. And I'm always here to support however I can. So you can feel free to drop my email to your listeners. I'm always happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I'll definitely add your details and links into the show notes at the end of the podcast.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hey everyone, thanks again for tuning into this episode of the Female Founder World podcast. Hope you loved it. Another reminder to drop us a 5-star review with a nice little comment would be great to make me feel good about what we're doing here. But it also helps other people find the show. So it is actually super useful and super helpful. Also, if you are people have started like screenshotting what they're listening to, posting it to their Instagram. Thank you for doing that. It helps get the word out there. Much, much appreciated. But just tag me or tag Female Founder World. I am at Jasmine Garnsworthy. And if you tag me, I'll obviously repost it because I want everyone to know how good the show is and how helpful it is. Anyway, chat to you tomorrow for our next daily episode. Bye.